are the Lit Ladies.
I'm Christie.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Carissa.
3 writers and moms exploring how to live out our faith in our literary lives.
We span the country from the coast to the Midwest, and with different stages of life, careers, and favorite genres, we're sure to cover the literary landscape.
In every episode, we'll discuss books we love, reading life, and writing craft, using the Bible as our guide for beauty, goodness, and truth. New episodes drop every other Friday.
All right, hello and welcome to the Lit Ladies. Today is a special day for us because we have 2 guests who are experts in the Christmas genre. So we have Betsy St, Amant, Haddox, and Morgan Tarpley Smith. And as I'm reading that, I'm realizing you both have long names to say. So we're so excited to have them. They collaborated on a Christmas novella that was published last year with Barber. And I actually got to meet both of them. Well, actually, I met Betsy a couple years ago. She helped me with a critique on a manuscript through her LLC, and so she's been a big cheerleader of mine. And I met Morgan just quickly at conference and immediately wanted to chat more. And so when this idea came together, it was so much fun to think we get a full chunk of time to discuss books and Christmas. So we're so glad you ladies are here today. And I am going to read their official bios before they tell us a bit about themselves. So Betsy St. Amant Haddox is the author of over 20 romance novels and novellas. She resides in North Louisiana with her hubby, 2 daughters, an impressive stash of coffee mugs, and 1 furry schnauzer toddler. Betsy has a BA in communications and a deep-rooted passion for seeing women restored to truth. When she's not composing her next book or baby talking her dog, Betsy can be found somewhere in the vicinity of an iced coffee. She writes frequently for I Believe, a devotional site for women, and offers author coaching and editing service through Storyside LLC. And author Morgan Tarpley Smith is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, and world traveler who weaves stories of history and heart. Her writing transports readers to places both near and far and intertwines past and present to explore questions of truth and faith. Her debut novella, A Louisiana Snow, was published by Barber within the contemporary romance collection, A Louisiana Christmas to Remember, which ranked number 8 on the 2023 ECPA bestseller list for Christmas fiction. She lives in Louisiana with her husband and son. For more information, visit www.morgantarpleysmith.com. All right, you 2 have impressive intros. So now tell us a little more about yourselves that maybe wouldn't be on your intros.
Well, I would like to clarify, and Morgan can probably back this up, that when you hear that we live in Louisiana, that does not mean we have gators in our backyards. We're not quite that far south, so let's just kill that rumor. Morgan actually just recently moved to the same town as me, so we're actually neighbors now, not like next door neighbors, but we're close. We had lunch the other day. It was so much fun.
So fun.
I'm really glad to have a writing buddy close. That's kind of rare for me. But yeah, so I've been writing contemporary romance for years, since I was a young adult, really. We won't talk about how long ago that really was. And I could probably take an entire other podcast and just talk about my dog because he's the best thing in the entire world. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll get to see photos of him, probably more than you want. Something else about me that's not really in my bio, again, you'll see it if you follow me, is I have recently become obsessed with CrossFit, which is crazy. If you've known me prior to a year ago, you'd be like, there's no way. Are you kidding me? But it's just been such a great outlet, and I'm obsessed. So I'm basically all about books, writing, CrossFit, and my schnauzer. So
I love it. And what spurred you into CrossFit? Because I follow Betsy, and it's encouraging to me because I'm trying to lift weights, so I'm always like, okay, I'm deadlifting today too. But what made you want to do CrossFit?
It was actually my husband, peer pressuring me. So he had started 6 months prior, and I've always enjoyed working out, just the gym or a bar class or something a little, lower intensity. But he just kept asking, and so finally for Christmas, I printed out a little coupon and I put it in his stocking, and it said, I'll come with you to one Saturday group class, team class, and be your partner. And he had actually gotten me a month free of classes at the same time. So I'm like, well, this has to happen.
Now it's a month.
Yeah. So I started like basically New Year's when the gym was freezing cold and the barbells felt like popsicles and it was such a nightmare. But I got hooked even in that kind of not ideal, weather. And now I'm about 10 months in. So I'm about to have my 1 year anniversary and coming up on 200 classes. So
good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right, Morgan, tell us a little bit about you that may not be in your bio.
Yeah, sure. So this is my debut, so I'm still new to the publishing world in this sense, but actually I'm also a children's author. Under a pen name called ML Tarpley. I have lower middle grade books and a writing book for kids, and I teach creative writing workshops for kids and teens, and I'm a performer. I do children's performance shows for library programs, and also I do plays and musicals. So I sing, dance, and act.
That is a triple threat.
So cool.
I cannot even fathom. I'm tone deaf. So awesome. Okay.
It's all in storytelling. It's all like visual storytelling. I'm a photographer as well, so like visual storytelling, written storytelling, acting.
Yeah. But you're a full artist. I mean, that's a full spectrum of the arts to be able to do. That's impressive. All right. Well,
it's fun.
We will have the link to A Louisiana Christmas to Remember in our show notes for any of our listeners who do want to read this. This episode will come out right at Christmas time, so it's the perfect time to get that Christmas story reading time in. But first, I just want to ask you, what made you all want to write a Christmas story?
Well, I think, just who doesn't love Christmas stories, you just automatically think about, cozy reads. Usually, for Louisiana, we usually have shorts at some point in December and then jackets at some point in December, Betsy, how it goes. So we're not always wearing wearing sweaters and drinking hot chocolate all through December, but that's the idea, cozy, comforting, and usually there's lightness to it, but even with some of the stories that have more depth and seriousness to them, there's usually just hope throughout.
Yeah.
Anna just a really good closure ending where you just feel so good, and I call it Christmas dopamine.
I love
so what
that.
do you think of Betsy?
No, I completely agree. There's just something special about Christmas books, and I just think it's for me personally, I can't read them any other time of year. I just can't. I can't read Christmas in March, or even Christmas in July is kind of hard. So it's something about a good kind of pressure. It's almost like you give yourself permission to sit and read because it's oh, it's Christmas. I have to read these because I can't later. It's now or never. And so you get to kind of put the other responsibilities aside and actually just do the cozy up hot chocolate thing and get the books read.
And when do you start your Christmas reading? When do you allow yourself?
For me, I think late October. I kind of need to get past Halloween maybe.
Okay.
So really coming up next week, I could maybe start reading. But I have a Jamie Jo Wright book that I've been saving for Halloween week. So this year, it'll be November before I start Christmas.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking mid-November to late for me too. So November.
Okay, so November. We just did a whole episode on horror books, and so Jamie Jo Wright came up as our spooky read. So we like her. We're fans of her over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Naturally, she would definitely come up.
Yeah. She's got the reigning corner of that market. So, okay. Tell us a little bit about how this idea came up with this trilogy. I think Morgan, you're the one who came up with the idea. How did that start? What made you want to do it?
Yeah, well, it started, it's really an amazing kind of process from my side, at least, because I hadn't published anything. I didn't have an agent at the time either. So I knew Betsy through just author channels and both being in Louisiana, but I didn't know Lenora, our other co-author. And so I was actually in a Facebook group, and someone had posted about, I'm reading through Christmas books in all 50 states, which is great undertaking to do that, but they were coming up short with Louisiana. And I got tagged in the post and said, do you know any Louisiana authors? Do you have a book? And I said, I don't know of any Louisiana Christmas novellas or novels, and they were like, well, write one. Someone was like, write one. And I was like, So then I was thinking, I'm from a small town in Louisiana, central Louisiana, and so I know small town, which a lot of times the Christmas stories are in these, smaller towns, where you have these sense of community. Not that you can't have that in cities, of course, but we had this small town feel. So I was like, okay, well, what if we did a small town and we did like multi-generational, and I don't really know beyond that, but what if it was novellas? And let me just talk to Betsy about that. So I messaged Betsy and said, well, I have this idea. What do you think? And I was like, no pressure. So Betsy, what did you think from there? What did you,
I was immediately in, because I was at the time thinking a novella would be like a really fun project. And sometimes it's nice to break up the longer books and bigger projects that just take a long time, And so I was like, man, this would be fun. I haven't done a Christmas novella. I've done Christmas love-inspired novels, which are kind of that mid-length. Like, they're longer than a novella, but they're not like the trade length. And so I just thought it sounded great. And I thought about Lenora she wasn't born in Louisiana, but she spent most of her adult life in Louisiana before she moved to Florida.
Okay.
And so she was someone else, familiar with the culture in the area and spent most of her life in the same state. So that's when we kind of nabbed her. And I think me and Morgan were both surprised when she agreed, because, she writes 100 books a year. Like, I don't even know how many she writes.
Wow.
Her love inspired and all of those heartwarming lines. So that's kind of where it all started.
Is she also represented by Tamala?
No, she has a different agent from, I'm not sure how long she's been represented, but no, she's with someone else.
Okay.
Yeah, and so out of the project, we actually, that's the thing I was going to say too, but I signed the book contract before I had an agent. But Tamala was gracious enough to be like, well, I'll represent you on the project. Then we kind of had this like dance where she didn't want to assume that, that I would want her to represent me, and I didn't want to assume that she might offer. So we just kind of let it lie. And then later she's like, so do you want to talk about if I could represent you? And I was like, yes. And she's been so great. And Betsy and Lenora working on this project was so great. I learned so much from y'all, and it was really special because this is my first book. This is Betsy's 25th, and it's Lenora's 100th.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, wow!
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, kind of a milestone mark for everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
It was crazy too, because we didn't even figure that out until we were well into the project. So.
Yep.
Wow.
It was a milestone special project all around.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the planning that went into coordinating the characters in the town. How'd you all do that?
That's hilarious, because I used to say if we could print out our Facebook Messenger chat, it would rival like an entire Gilmore Girls season script. Like, it would just be so long. We did some emailing back and forth, but we just kind of kept this like months of just running conversation on Facebook. And we also had a Pinterest board where we pinned our characters and town, and kept each other inspired and kept each other aware of like what the characters looked like. Because one of the things that made this one a little tricky was it's really written more like a continuity, where each story picks up exactly where the other one left off in the weeks leading up to Christmas. And so everyone's characters are in everyone's story. It's like more so than just a quick cameo. Like, there's conversations among the family members in each novella. So there was a lot of like, did I get this character's voice right? Can you check this scene? Is this what your character would say? What would your character probably be wearing? Like, there was so much we had to ask each other about. So that conversation just never ended.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it would stretch between Louisiana and Florida if we printed it out, like from your house, our houses to Lenora's, Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes Lenora, when we do interviews with her, she'd say, these young girls, they were just, sometimes we had to just stop and email because I couldn't keep up,
That's cute.
She's so funny. She's the youngest at heart that I've ever met, so I don't know what she's talking about.
I know, Christy, you like Pinterest boards for your stories.
I do, and I'm such a visual person that I think that was a great way to kind of compile things. And for some reason, it does spark like that. Just let's keep going, let's figure this out. And I was gonna say, I read the first two books in the story, and I was like, it's just like it really is like a seamless story. Like, I didn't notice any over like voice changes. Like, the people seem the same. Like, it was great continuity.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank
That's good to
you.
hear.
Yeah, we worked hard, and we really felt like it would be nice because you can still read them separately, like novella, just digest it in a chunk and sit down and read, or you can just read the whole thing through, and it's either way. You can stop or you can keep going, but we really liked the aspect. Barbara liked the aspect as well of it, and we were like, we're up for the challenge, and we'll see if it ends us by the end, but we're going to be fine.
I love it. How long is a novella? What would you say? How many words?
I think traditionally it's kind of in that 25,000 to 35, maybe 40,000 range.
Okay.
I mean, I think each publisher kind of has their own parameter there. In my mind, if I hear somebody wants me to write a novella, I think 30,000.
Okay.
And then if I'm a little over, a little under, but like that's usually the window I try to hit is around 30.
Okay. That was what was in my mind, but I wasn't quite sure what you all aimed for.
Yeah, I think we had 35,000-ish to do somewhere in there. So for these,
Yeah.
Yeah, because it made it long to have 35,000 word novels in one print edition. That's a thick book.
It is, although it's kind of nice because
Case in
sometimes
point.
you'll... Oh, you have it! Yay, put it up so we can see it. Such a pretty cover, too.
it's backwards,
It is.
right? It's me backwards, so... But
Honestly, I can only...
Yeah,
You still see the prettiness.
we love because the house plays such a big role in the book because it's a historic house, and the family, the grandmother, her daughter, which is the mom, and then our characters are first cousins. So we love that intergenerational storyline because you have that Southern fiction, the charm of it, the small town, the customs, but you also have intergenerational, almost like women's fiction because you have these strong female relationships, and then of course you have the romances of different age, and then some where they already knew each other, some they didn't. So we tried to really mix up the tropes and mix up, like the experience.
And I think you did it really well. It's impressive.
Thank you. Morgan, I think it's time to tell the story of the cover, the rough draft cover that we had to correct. I don't know that we've ever told this story on an interview. I think I'm going to do it.
Tell us.
Y'all want the exclusive?
We want the exclusive.
I'm just tired enough to just go there. Okay, so Barbara did an amazing job. We love our cover so much. Immediately, we loved the door and the Christmas vibes. And like Morgan said, the house is so important that we were really happy that they agreed this is the vibe, right? So they sent the first draft to us, and we were like, okay, we all had the same thought. We were like, we love this, but instead of the sled by the front door, Morgan can show you, there's a sled propped up against the door, super cute, very aesthetic. That was a pineapple statue. And we were like, pineapples have really nothing to do with Louisiana. So we were a little confused, but we're like, okay, it's kind of fine. But some of us realized that pineapples can have a completely different connotation as a symbol.
That was my first
out in the world.
Yeah.
Y'all are nodding. Yeah, that was not Barbara's thought. That was not her.
We're not sure. We're not sure if it was like already in a photo, or maybe it was just put a statue there, or maybe it was. We're not really sure, but we just were kind of like.
You're like,
okay.
These are going to be the wrong readers. We're not drawing those readers into this story.
I was like people are going to be possibly very disappointed, or this is not the Christmas story that we're telling. So it was hilarious, and we were trying to very respectfully explain in the email to Barbara. We're like, okay, so sorry that we're thinking of these things, but so they were like, we'll replace the pineapple, and we're like, praise the Lord. So
sleds are safer.
The pineapple turned into a sled.
And at first we were kind of like, if it was a fleur-de-lis, we would understand,
Right.
If it was a fleur-de-lis, because that's one of our symbols in Louisiana with the French culture and the heritage. But we were just like, what is that by the door?
This is so funny.
We got such a good laugh out of it. It was great. Yeah, it was some much needed comic relief at that point of the project. We love the sled. We are big fans of the sled.
Yeah, and it was really fun too because we got to actually really weigh in on the process for this book cover because a lot of romance you see characters on the front, which is understandable. But when we have 3 different women represented, and they're all different ages. We were trying to find a common denominator, and when they were asking us the questionnaire about it, we were like, we really feel strongly about it being very visual with a house and classic Christmas decorations and like a southern porch. It's their choice what they want to have as a cover, but they really liked our idea, and we're really, like I said, we were really pleased with how beautiful, and we get comments on how Christmassy and eye-catching it is, so we really agree, so it all worked out.
What do you think, we're talking through a little bit Christmas books and their place in the market and what readers look for. What do you think readers look for in a Christmas story?
I would just call it like the cozy moment.
Okay.
You know, like we were talking earlier with the hot chocolate and everything. I think in a Christmas story, it's like when everything comes together at the end, which you know you're going to get with a romance, right? The happily ever after. But when there's like romance and snow and Christmas tree farms, or you know, some kind of family nostalgic moment, I think that takes like a different level for the reader when you pair those things together, and it just feels very wholesome and peace on earth, you know. And that's usually what you're wanting out of a Christmas read, I think. Especially a novella or like a series of short stories, like you're just wanting that quick moment of, oh, that was really nice, you know.
I do love those magical moments with everything just comes together, and it's just that romancy goodness, and you're just like, yeah, all is right in the world for this one moment. It's all right. It's all perfect.
Yes.
And I think the other part too is like when readers can picture themselves in that town, like they want to visit it. Like you've really done your job as an author, because it's like, I want to go there. I want to go to that coffee shop. I want to go to that restaurant. I want to go to that festival, you know. And so I think too, it's like immersed in all the senses. Which of course, you know, writing is sensory anyway, but with Christmas too, you have very certain smells and things that are, you know, like with Christmas time. And so I think it's just a combo of that, and like I said, that feel good Christmas dopamine that you just feel like, this is great.
Yep. Yep. And maybe the time of year people are really looking for that. Maybe other times of the year they're willing to, you know, maybe read a scarier book or a sad book. Christmas time, I think people are looking for a specific package of a story that they're getting. So,
and I think too, Christmas is so emotional for people because I mean, all of us, we've lost loved ones. The memories are good, but they're also, you know, bittersweet. So I think it's just this time where you need extra uplifting too, because you're realizing that you don't have certain people that are here now with you to celebrate Christmas, you know. So I think it's that thing, you need that extra uplifting.
That makes sense. Yeah, you want the warm fuzzies to make some of the sadness better. Yeah. So do you think it's only the setting that makes it? Is it just that it's Christmas time, or is it more that makes a good Christmas book?
I feel like I can't give you a title or an example, but I do believe I've read books before where it was a Christmas novel, but like the holiday didn't actually happen on the page. You know, it was either leading up to Christmas, and maybe you never even saw Christmas morning. But it was okay because it was still that season. It's like the season of Christmas is still sufficient. It doesn't have to have like Christmas Day on the page, you know. And I think a lot of books, just the stories and the way the plots go, they sometimes will even stop on Christmas Eve, which still is very, you know, satisfying.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, it depends on the expectations. I mean, it depends on the publisher too, what their readers are looking for. Because, like I said, if it's romance, it's going to live it's going to have a happily ever after ending. But it also depends on, like, you know, if they're more geared to wanting like families or just single romances where they meet. You know, like it just kind of depends on that too. But I think a lot of it is that just that sense, especially if it's Christian fiction, that sense of hope, which is threads in all of our Christian fiction, no matter if it's Christmas or not. But just that elevated thread of miracles can happen any time of the year, but it's like this extra lift of something amazing, extraordinary might happen. And also it's reunion. I think that's another thing is like Christmas is when we come together as friends and family, church family. So it's just this sense of reunion that we don't always have through the year, you know. So it's so I think that's another part of it is if it has a sense of reunion to the Christmas story of some kind, whether it's that, you know, whether it's a trope of reunion romance, which one of our stories is that, or maybe it's just a long lost family member that's finally rejoining the family, or there's, you know, there's always some kind of reunion aspect, I think.
Well, even in like Hallmark movies and stuff, it's such a big trope of coming home for Christmas, right? And that's like the whole reunion mentality. So, and it's never overdone. Like that could be every trope for every book or movie for Christmas, and it works because that's what you want. You want that reunion, like you're saying. So I completely agree.
It's true. Coming home. That's such a good way to put it. It's almost coming home to a simpler time too, because even the movies or books that are set in cities, they somehow find a way to make it more home centralized. So it's at the house with the family. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and almost like neighborhoods and stuff have like events and things in cities where it's more like a small town, but it's a neighborhood too. And I think nostalgia, like you said. So
I was just going to say it kind of leads into what we were going to say about like tropes, like, and that's definitely one of the tropes, like the coming home, and then the second chance romance, which I know is featured, which I haven't actually read that much of, but I did really enjoy it. I always loved the enemies to lovers, which was kind of Betsy's, and then I always loved like the older brother who's always like annoyed by the little sister until he realizes she's grown up. Like that's one of my all-time favorites. And I even love fake dating. I pretty much love any trope, I feel like. So holidays, I feel like you could definitely get away with stuff. Yeah.
We're going to do a whole episode on tropes at some point, but you really can have all the extra sugar and all the extra happiness at a Christmas time of the year. Morgan, I love your term Christmas dopamine, because I say even with romance books, I'm like, I look for that dopamine hit. Like, and I have no science for this, but I really do think there is a dopamine hit when you have that like feel good, like, oh, I just read a good book. Like there is something chemical. So anyway, I think that's a really good Christmas dopamine.
Yeah, and it's an emotional experience. Like reading should be emotional because the reader, I mean, we cry and stuff when we're writing it, right? As writers, like we get emotional when we're writing it, and that comes through to our readers. And when they say that, I really smiled for like a solid hour after I finished your book, that just like, that's the dopamine. I mean, and that's just like we've been able to share and uplift someone to the point where they just felt joy or they got reminded of something in their life. And especially, like I said, with Christian fiction, it's like that because we have a message and we have a, we're all edifying each other and encouraging each other in the same faith. And I would say, too, my favorite trope, I think, is forced proximity, which sounds kind of violent, but it's like there's snow, you're in a cabin and you can't get out, or like, oh, your car broke down, so now you're stranded at this farm with a very handsome farmer. Yes. So I really like that because you can do it in different ways. I mean, it's the same trope, but you can do it in so many different ways that I just like, what are they going to do now? How are they going to happen? Oh, wait, her car's fixed. So what's going to happen now that she decides to stay?
For sure. I think one of my favorites is fake date. I think that works really good at Christmas because everybody needs that fake date at Christmas, to impress the family or get the parents off their back or stop the matchmaking, And so I actually wrote that in a recent Love Inspired novel, Their Holiday Secret. And it was so much fun. I just had absolutely a blast writing that trope.
And
I'll probably do another one.
I was just
can't
going to
help
say.
it. You won a Carol for that, a Carol Award. So
yes, apparently
we're still celebrating.
Apparently other people like that trope too, because yes, that one just won a Carol. That was really exciting.
And it's a Christmas book too. Is that what you're saying? Oh,
it is.
Well, look, we've got such great recommendations. We'll add that one too. So that one's their Holiday Secret. Is that the title? Okay, perfect.
That's it.
So, do you think that Christmas books are more popular for traditional publishers or indie? Do you have thoughts on that?
I really feel like I see them everywhere. So I don't really know for sure, but I think there's a ton of them out there from a whole bunch of different places, and I like them all. So,
yeah, I think we see a lot from publishers, but it's different authors. I think with indie, we see consistent same authors doing Christmas every year, and that's not the case with traditional because you're not going to get, unless you're certain people in the industry, you're not going to get a Christmas book every year coming out. It's not usually how it happens, right, Betsy? So, but with indies, like I know some indie author friends that their readers expect a Christmas novella or novel every year, so they better deliver it. So you start seeing, and they know your readers expect, and so that's really fun.
That's true.
As I'm an indie for children's publishing, and so like getting to control your timeline and stuff. It's fun to be able to have plenty of Christmas books to read for indie and traditionally published. So,
well, and I see a lot of authors doing kind of a hybrid thing where they have a traditional series out and then they'll self-publish a Christmas novella that ties into that series, and so it kind of gives their readers a little Christmas treat that maybe the publisher didn't put out, but in those cases, the publisher supports it because it's just getting more traction for everybody. So I feel like I see that a lot too. It's like the hybrid route.
That's a good point. I do see that as well.
That is a good point. We were talking, Christy and I, with our friend Carissa, about how Christmas really has seemed like it's its own genre. I mean, I think most of them, like we talked about, are coming home or second chance romance or, saving the festival, whatever some of those tropes are. But it really seems like there's a whole market for just Christmas books. So it's interesting to see. I'm wondering if there's more demand for that than there used to be. I mean, do you think that's been something that's been around for a long time? Christmas books?
I feel like right now, and again, this is kind of a limited perspective, but I do believe that right now there is a bigger push from traditional publishers to put out more Christmas books. I just got my first contract with Waterbrook and Multnomah for a Christmas book coming out next year, so Christmas of 2025, and it's a Christmas rom-com. And they were actually kind of seeking out Christmas projects from authors. Like, they were wanting that. It wasn't like I had the idea and just shot in the dark. Like, they wanted it. So that's kind of unusual. I've never really seen that happen in past years. And so I feel like maybe the traditional publishers are kind of like gunning for more Christmas stories right now. And that's really cool and fun. And I hope that lasts. I don't know if this is just a passing season or what, but that was really exciting to get to do. And then I know as like a reader and an author, because sometimes it's hard to take off your hat for one or the other, right? But like for both, I feel like with Christmas stories, I feel like there's so much more fictional license that you can take. Like, I'm willing to believe so much more as a reader, like all the things that go wrong or stuff that maybe should probably be a little corny or unrealistic. I'm completely fine setting that aside and being like, yeah, no, I'm totally here for this. Like, make it up. Let's do it, And so then from the author perspective, readers are kind of feeling that. So you get to kind of take more liberties with your story and maybe go more fun places. Coming back to the Hallmark example, Hallmark movies really are, a little corny or cliche. They can kind of have those moments like you love it, like you want it, you expect it, So I think with Christmas books, it's like a little bit of the pressure comes off of the authors because the readers are a little more open to having that Christmas story told in that, so that they can get to that wholesome moment at the end. If that makes any sense at all.
It does.
I was going to say, I think it goes hand in hand with fake dating, because in the real world, I feel like fake dating is one of those like bizarre things that you would never actually do. But suddenly in a Hallmark movie, it's totally plausible. And I have one with, it's a movie, it's not Hallmark. It's Slater from,
Mario Lopez. Then
yes, it's him, Mario and Clarissa Lopez explains it all, and it's like Holiday in Handcuffs, and you're like,
Melissa Joan Hart.
I watch that like every year, and I'm like, why is this believable? It is totally not believable, but you know what? I still watch it every year.
And then you're like, she should be in jail, but she's not, thankfully. And there's a HEA. There's Happily Ever After.
She literally kidnapped him in that movie. Like, she literally kidnapped him, and we're fine with it. We're like, it's so
totally fine. We're rooting for her at that point.
It's Christmas time.
What is wrong with us?
No, it's Slater. He'll be fine.
He's got dimples. It's fine. Totally fine.
It's all right.
He was fine by the end, so it all came out well, thankfully, or it would have ended up in jail. So
that's so funny you brought that movie up, because I've seen that forever ago, and that's the first thing I think of when I think of fake dating, because it was like my first brush with that in a movie. Yeah. So, I didn't know anyone else had ever seen that. That's hilarious.
Oh, I've seen that.
I've seen it too. Stuff. I mean, I've seen it too, but it was hilarious.
I'm going to ask our listeners who has seen this movie. I'm making a note right now. I always love to know the answers to this, because topics like this come up and we're like, okay, we've all four seen this movie. So have other people seen this movie? Okay, but
yeah, totally.
Betsy, that's a really good answer. I think that it's almost like this is the time of year people want certain feelings and they're willing to overlook certain realities to get that exact end goal. So it's almost like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Are we having more of this content so we like it more? Or are we wanting more of this content so people are looking to put it out? Like, I don't know which one comes first, but it's almost like hot chocolate.
I think you're wanting it more.
Maybe
Well, like with mental health, like after, like you just want something warm and fuzzy.
You do.
Like you don't want all the drama that's in the world. Like you just want to be. I just want to sit down with this book. I want to believe in love again. I want to believe in miracles again, and the happily ever after.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if people want life to slow down too. Life feels so busy and fast paced.
The small town.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wonder.
Yeah.
Like when you can kind of escape to a small town, you're like, okay, I can slow down for a little bit and imagine that life is a little different.
And totally, I think too, it's the other unbelievable thing when you're watching or reading. It's like people are going to events every day. Like they're baking cookies, and then the next day they're picking out a tree, and then they're doing a caroling. And I'm like, who has time in their life to do all these things and have a
Don't y'all have
kid
jobs?
or have a family and they have this job? And I'm like, do they work? So like, I think that's another thing is like when we were planning our books, we had to pick, like we made a list of all the Christmassy things, like bake cookies, have mistletoe moment. I call it a mistletoe moment in my novella. So I got the mistletoe moment. But we had to make sure we didn't put too many, but we also did different ones. So that was something we actually had a conversation about. And so I think, too, like when you're watching the movies or reading, you're like, they've made cookies, they picked out a tree, they've decorated it, they've gone to a Christmas lighting ceremony, they've gone to a Christmas festival, they've had hot chocolate. You know, like you're just going down the list.
Snowball fight.
Snowman, build a snowman, snowball fight.
I've seen like drinking game cutouts on Etsy that's meant for Hallmark movies where it's like every time they throw a snowball, take a shot. I'm like, oh my gosh, that exists right now. And I've seen exercise versions too, like 10 burpees every time there's a Christmas tree on the screen, you know. So funny.
Oh, that is funny.
But we love it. We're here for it.
We're here for it. And honestly, like real life doesn't really work out that way. Have you ever tried to make Christmas cookies with kids? Like every year, I'm like, this is the year. It's going to be so magical. And it's miserable. Like they don't listen.
It's
they
not
make
magical.
messes. You have a mess. And then you're like, I can't give these to my neighbors. Nobody wants this.
And gingerbread houses. Don't forget gingerbread houses. They
It's
never
a tradition with my in-laws.
They never look quite right.
Nope.
There's always a collapse of a house roof somewhere.
It's true. And then
You know, my mom like got way ahead of that when she was doing all that fun stuff with me and my sister's kids when they were younger. She bought the like model, like the Christmas gingerbread house model that's like plastic. And you just ice it and decorate it. And then after the end of the year, you wash it and you put it in a box and you bring it back
That's
out.
clever.
Next Christmas.
That was smart.
So you don't have any like, you know, sobbing children because the graham cracker broke.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
super smart. Yeah.
So
Yeah. She got way ahead of that.
Everyone note that down because your mom is brilliant.
Yes. Plastic gingerbread houses and a lot of candy. You're good.
we literally had our friends visit last year at Thanksgiving, and I thought it would be so fun to do a girls and boys competition on gingerbread, and it was not. None of them had fun. It was
no.
miserable. I'm talking kids, not adults. So, anyway.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
Nope.
I think we've got some good thoughts on what people are looking for in Christmas stories and why we like them so much. Do you ladies, you experts in this genre, have more thoughts on that before we move on to talk about Louisiana itself?
I was going to say, just thinking about the tropes and like the fake dating and the role of technology. Like, you know, you got mail, which wasn't necessarily at Christmas, I don't think, but it was like the email, so it had to be released like at that time because, you know, obviously nobody's emailing and instant messaging anymore. And I was thinking, I did watch one, I think it was on Netflix, and it was catfishing. So it's like this girl traveled across the country to meet this guy that she met, and it actually was a different guy. And of course, it works out great, whatever. But it's just funny to me, like the role that technology can play in like keeping these stories like fresh.
For sure. I had a novel, Tacos for Two, that's actually kind of inspired by You've Got Mail. They quote the movie like in the book. I made it very specific. But I had to create a dating app because I was like, oh man, people don't use email and messaging anymore.
Yeah.
And it got really complicated because for my story's purposes, to keep the You've Got Mail kind of story there, I had to make it anonymous. And I'm like, who would sign up for a dating app? What kind of dating app doesn't have photos? But then I turned it into that's the point. That app was for specific people who want to connect, kind of like The Voice, right? Where looks are taken out of it, you fall for each other's personalities. And of course, everyone could have their own reason for wanting something like that, even like a celebrity or something, you know? So I kind of just had to create that whole thing. And I ended up getting one of my friends who had actually met her husband through a dating app just like a year before, and getting her thoughts on the progression, like, okay, when did y'all start moving to like actually texting each other on your personal phone, not the app? Like, I had to get advice on all of that. But I think it turned out really well. And I love how my publisher formatted the different apps and texting and messaging and everything like on the page. It was super fun.
I loved that book.
Anyway,
I read it a while ago. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
And I think food trucks is a timely thing too, because 10 years ago we didn't know about food trucks, but now it's like commonplace.
Yeah, and in 10 years, somebody might read this book and be like, why food trucks?
Yeah.
Like,
what was the deal?
I love food trucks.
Also, and I cannot say that I recommend this, but you are almost ahead of Love is Blind. Like, now that's a whole TV show. Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a trap.
Man.
What is it?
Yeah.
Like a train wreck you can't look away from, but it's interesting.
It is such a train wreck. We watched last season that got super, viral for all the drama, and I was like, I can't do that again. Like, I cannot do that again. So I'm out. But I made it through one season and was like, oh my gosh.
I know.
I was thinking of Ted Lasso, if you've seen Ted Lasso.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't she, because she's, on the dating app with the soccer player, and they don't know who they are, but they're like messaging back and forth. So I don't remember exactly the details of it, but it must have been the same thing because there wasn't a picture involved.
Yeah, but we don't have to keep this in our thing, but Christy, he was young. He was the player. That's terrible. In Ted Lasso, remember?
She looks amazing. She can date whoever she wants.
I forgot about that.
He's a player, but he's like over 18. He can make his own choices.
Okay,
that's great.
I want to talk.
Yeah, we need a blooper reel.
I know that's always what happens. We get in those side talks. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Louisiana. I live in California. I did go to New Orleans. I have a feeling you're going to tell me that's not representative of the rest of the state. So, how similar is the fictional town of Moreau to your experiences in Louisiana?
Well, Moreau is based on a small city called Natchitoches, Louisiana, and it's in north central Louisiana, pretty much like an hour south of us-ish. And so it's in north central. My dad actually lives there, but it is known for Christmas festivals for like over 100 years or close to 100 years. It's like 1920 something. It's had the Festival of Lights, and so like we wrote in about there was a river with lights displays being put up. Well, that's reminiscent of what they actually do, but they have like tons and tons of displays. People come from all over the nation and even international, come to the festival, and they do fireworks. It starts in November, and then it's just that there's a really quaint front street, and so we just kind of took some of the elements. There's old homes, like actually Still Magnolias was filmed there. It's really famous for that setting. The house in Still Magnolias is there. You can go tour it. So it has those old historic houses. It has this beautiful front street with all these shops and things. They decorate it so pretty for Christmas time. They have Christmas music and like we don't have snow, That's why we have a rare snow, which is why I wrote it into my novella, because it is rare. So they do like foam soap machines. It's kind of sad, but they do that. And just like it is really festive and fun. And so it was just kind of inspired our town.
Okay. I was just going to say the name again. It looks different than it sounds.
Natchitoches.
Okay.
Yeah, it's based on a Native American name.
Natchitoches. I always thought it was Natchitoches.
Natchitoches.
Natchitoches. Okay. All right. Sorry, Betsy.
Well, there's a Nacogdoches, Texas. There's a Nacogdoches, Texas, and a Natchitoches, and a Natchez, Mississippi, which is where I was born. So.
Just don't even try.
I'm not going to try.
Pick a new hobby.
I'm not going to try. Okay, Betsy, tell us what you were going to say about Louisiana.
I was going to say when you drive. Like if you start up north where me and Morgan now live and you drive south, it's like every hour it just gets more and more cultural.
Okay.
The closer you get to New Orleans, like the landscape, the marshes, you'll start seeing like the wildlife and the birds changing. Like it's kind of wild. Like, but being up in North Shreveport, as I explain it more like it kind of feels a little bit more like East Texas than like Southern Louisiana. So, New Orleans obviously is very southern, touristy, cultural, and even some other towns like Lafayette Lafayette's about an hour outside New Orleans, I think, 2 hours. It's
2 hours. I was only an hour and a half from New Orleans where I used to live, but it's the Cajun culture there. So
yeah. So like some other little towns will have almost that same measure of culture, and then other ones that are closer to New Orleans won't. Like it's just kind of strange. It's really interesting. So every little city is kind of hit or miss, and something else of note is we have, we're the only state that has parishes instead of counties.
Oh.
And so I've had editors before, if I had said a book in Louisiana, I've had editors change parish to county thinking it was like an error. And I'm like, no. Like, you got to leave that alone.
You're the one who's right.
Because we're just the only, we're the only weirdos that have to have a different word. So.
Yeah, and I think, like Betsy said too, like even outside, my husband's from New Orleans actually, and so I'm a little familiar with it. But even outside of New Orleans, like you go south, his dad's from Houma, which is like Bayou, like the accent, everything is different. Lafayette is going to be closer over to the Texas border, where Lake Charles is. Lafayette is definitely Cajun culture. My family, my heritage is actually Acadian, so the Acadians that came from Canada and were exiled and came to Louisiana. So, like, you know, you have just these different aspects of that. And then, like, where I'm from in central Louisiana, it almost feels like more like Mississippi, like rural Mississippi, very rural southern. I lived on a lake. We had a lot of hunting, fishing, but very isolated, very rural. So very different. And even, like, the cities, like Alexandria is the closest city I was from. It's very different than Shreveport and New Orleans and Baton Rouge and Monroe. So...
It's so fascinating.
So I had my question when I was reading you guys' story. I was like, does it really snow? Because I'm in like coastal North Carolina, and like we rarely get snow. So I was like, did they really get snow? But you did say rare, so I'm like, maybe that's just for the Christmas mood.
Yeah, it is, and it's rare, but it does happen. It's a little more sleety than we would like. It's more ice. We get ice storms.
Does your entire state shut down? Because if we get snow like an inch or two, it's like we're done.
Yeah. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the equipment to handle, and it's dangerous.
Throw some salt down.
Yeah, we don't even have the salt. So I mean, sometimes we do, and then it's like bridges like are unsafe. So we're just like,
you're shut down.
We can't deal with this, and we don't have the budget to prepare for very rare situations.
Right.
So
we actually get, I think, the most if it's going to snow, because it has a couple years ago we got 2 years in a row of like what we would call a blizzard. Like it was so bad, like it was so much, but it was more ice than true snow. It was very dangerous, but that happened in January, and then again the next year in February. And so those are the months that you're more likely to get it. We kind of joke like our weather is like 9 or 10 months of summer, and then ice storm, and then summer.
Okay,
like
so it's hot a lot
not
of the
a
year.
true spring or fall. It's very hot and humid for most of the year. We'll have a very brief spring, a very brief fall. But like the trees around here don't really start turning until mid-late November.
Wow. Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. Yeah,
that is, and kind of similar. I live on the central coast of California, and we have a lot of moderate climate too. We do it gets cold in the winter, but that's it. So
I was gonna say, do your palm trees turn colors, Kelly, in California?
I'm gonna text you a picture of the turning trees, Christy. Okay. Kristen, we have been friends for a long time, so we're a little sassy with each other. But okay, so I want to talk a little bit transition a little bit about hurricanes. And it was interesting. I was reading this Christmas book, and hurricanes typically feel very foreign to me, again, in California. This year, we've had hurricane news frequently with Helene and then with Milton coming through. So talk to us just a little bit. That was kind of a key point of your Christmas story. And then this year, hurricanes made big national news. So is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah, we had a hurricane come up through Shreveport that hit Lake Charles really hard. Morgan, was that 4 years ago? 2019?
Yeah, I think it's about 4. Yeah. It was right before the pandemic.
So probably 2019, the fall of 2019. And that was wild. Like, we were all really prepared. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, again, we're up the whole state where I'm at. But it destroyed Lake Charles. Like, it was so bad. And we actually got a hurricane, even this far up in Louisiana. And I don't know that I've ever seen that happen before that I can remember in my lifetime. But when Katrina hit in New Orleans in... let's see, it was
2005,
like
August 2005.
Okay, I thought it was 2000.
2005.
2005. And then Rita was a year later. So I was like married a year at that point, and I was young, and we had just gotten we had gotten engaged in New Orleans right at a year before it got so destroyed. And so I just remember feeling so like jolted, because I had grown up going to New Orleans for like youth group mission trips. And, it was just always this really cool city. And then I got engaged on the steamboat,
Wow.
in the river. And it was just like a really special city. So it was just so weird to be, I think I was 21 years old at that point, and just to kind of, see what that really did and be at a time in my life where I could finally like grasp the severity of it, like you wouldn't have if you were a kid,
Right.
And we had a lot of people come up and relocate to our area from down south. And so that kind of changed things. Even this far up north was just like an influx of people that just were starting over. I honestly can't remember, Morgan, maybe you can answer this, like why we got the idea to do the hurricane restoration in our book. Do you remember where that came from?
Yeah, so we wanted to honor French heritage in Louisiana, and like my family does have French heritage from not only Canada but also straight to France to New Orleans. So we're talking about like the cultural heritage of Louisiana that maybe is not linked to New Orleans but throughout the whole state. So we had settlers, like my family helped settle the Alexandria area, which is central Louisiana, and so we were kind of thinking about that. And so we had this French-style chapel. This town was a couple hundred years old. And Natchitoches is actually older than New Orleans by 4 years. It's the oldest settlement in Louisiana Purchase, the whole Louisiana Purchase. And so we were also kind of going off of that, like this small community that had such a historical significance to the area. We had this chapel, and we were like, well, what if this family that we're writing about, what if they have historical significance to the town, and they family built this chapel, and my character Maddie's like dream is to be married there, but then this hurricane comes through, it destroys like part of this chapel, and then she is like dead set on restoring this chapel, and that's part of her story arc, is that she's trying to fix things in her own life and everything around her, and she's so trying to, but it's based on her past and things, which I'm not going to do, spoiler alert, but anyway, so that's kind of where it came in, was what, and also like as we were seeing the, in the news, like just the horrific, everything that's happened, it's been mind-blowing, in the eastern part of the U.S. and in Florida, and just seeing the communities. That's what we keep hearing. We have author friends, Pepper Basham's one of them. She's been updating us when she can, but she's just talked about the community, sense of community that has just been even stronger and come together. And that's kind of one thing, is like hurricanes bring you together, disasters, tragedies, as much as we wish they would never happen. We do come together in a way that we don't otherwise. And so it was just a way to bring the community together, to want to have a common goal of restoring this part of the town's history. And I think that's kind of how it wove into the storyline. You think, Betsy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm remembering that now. I've written so many books since this one out. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I was gonna say with Katrina too, like my husband's from New Orleans, so he did evacuate during Katrina, so he's kind of told me a little bit about that. But actually, I remember it vividly and that's why I know the exact month and year it was, because I was home from college. It was still summer. We didn't start until September at the school I was at. And so I just had my wisdom teeth out the day before. And so all I could do was lay up on a couch with like pain meds and watching the footage, and was just like, oh my gosh, and thinking like, what can I do? And I knew our church had a disaster relief team, so I knew they were already, and also shelter. So a lot of Central Louisiana has a lot of, and North Louisiana too, have a lot of evacuation shelters for places down south for this exact reason. And so our church gym, I knew would be turned into an evacuation center. So I started calling, saying like, I can't do anything because I'm literally laid up with pain meds, but like, what do you need? And they're like, well, we really need donations of like towels and sheets. And I was like, well, I can start calling through the church directory. So I just started calling, and I probably mumbled a little bit because my mouth was still dead. But I was like, like, can you donate? They're having people come in, evacuees, they need more donations. And then when I went to college, our church group went down to New Orleans and worked with FEMA for over a week, and we gutted out houses in the Ninth Ward, which is one of the hardest flooded areas in New Orleans. And we got to actually, had hazmat suits on and gut out the houses to hopefully help the people if they could come back and rebuild. But it was definitely, mind-blowing, and just sorting through people's belongings. And, it just makes you think. So all this has kind of brought me back to think about that experience, and then people that are on these rescue teams. Like, we didn't have to do that. We were just cleaning out houses and using crowbars. Like, they were trying to recover bodies and everything. And it's just... It's just unreal. And so, sorry, this is really taking a very serious turn here. But at the same time, through these tragedies come the spark of hope and community. And that's where, as Christians, like, we have hope in Christ, and that shines through in the darkest of times especially, but it's always there, and so I think it's just a reminder of that. It's been good for me, but also just hard, seeing everything and wishing you could do something about it.
Yeah. Well, Christmas or not, I'm glad that you were able to say that and express it, especially, again, for people who don't have that experience, who are on the other side of the country. You kind of hear the news and you feel disconnected, but I just love what you said about hope in Christ. And I think that's, as Christian writers, that's what we try to do. And we had a whole episode on this topic too, like whether there's a salvation narrative in Christian fiction or not, at the end of the day, you want to glorify Christ with what you're writing. And so that might be on a more serious level if you're talking about hurricanes, and it might be on a fluffy sugar Christmas dopamine level in Christmas books. But either way, there's a place for all of it. So I love that you had the hopeful restoration from a hurricane in your stories. I think that worked really well for your Christmas plot, and you hit on the not the benefits that come out of tragedy, but the hope that comes out of tragedy. So
yeah, it's a great way to say it.
We covered a bunch of the Christmas landscape. Is there anything else either of you would like to add in regards to your book or Christmas stories?
I would like to add the Christmas rom-com that I have coming out next year with Waterbrook. Just kind of playing off what we were just saying about, the spiritual threads, and sometimes the Christmas element is, I always want to say vibe because I have teenagers, the Christmas vibe is, stronger or more serious, or, and sometimes it's just more fun and lighthearted, and like there's room and an audience for both. And I think that was really one of the things I love about writing that book was it's my first Christmas rom-com, where it's supposed to be very funny and lighthearted. And of course there's still issues and conflict, but it was just a totally different type of writing. There wasn't like a big trauma or tragedy to deal with. And so, I think there's just a place for all types of those kinds of books. And I think when you're a Christian, your worldview shines through, whether there's the really meaningful church pew scene, or whether it's more of just a broader sense of Christmas, and I personally love reading all of those every year. I want a little bit of all of it. So
we're going to come back next year and read your rom-com. It'll be out next year, right?
Yay!
Next Christmas.
Yes.
Okay.
Christmas 2025.
2025. Okay.
The working title that they say they're going to keep it, so it's not 100% official, but the working title is Holly and Nick Hate Christmas.
Ooh.
So that was just to give you an idea.
Great names.
Are the characters Holly and Nick? I love it.
Part of why they hate Christmas.
Love
it. Okay, Morgan, what about you? Anything else you want to add to the conversation?
Well, I'll just mention that sometimes our characters name themselves and we don't even think about it. And mine was Maddie, whether I liked it or not. But it was good because it actually is my maternal great-grandmother's name, and I was born on her birthday. So it was a fun tribute to her, and the character had to be Maddie. So, and it's also, her character is based on my past job. I was a small town newspaper reporter, photographer for almost 14 years. And so I was like, they say write what you know. And of course, as writers, we do a lot of research for things that we don't know about. But in this case, I was like, well, this is familiar. Let's just go with it. And it worked with her running around town, knowing everybody and asking, being in people's business, nosy. And I was like, maybe this is hitting a little too close to home for me, but it's working. So that was just it was kind of fun to have that perspective from my own experience.
Well, and I kept accidentally calling Morgan Maddie, like when we were talking in our messages, because she was like her character to me, and so both names starting with M, my brain just couldn't handle it, and so I kept accidentally referring to Morgan as Maddie, and then having to correct myself. Morgan, there were so many times I did that in our messenger and like caught it and deleted it before you saw it. Like it was so often.
By the end of it, we called each other by our character's name because Lenora felt like she's like a mom to you in front, and like. So like, it was just fun. All crazy, and like you and I are cousins, sure.
Right.
So it's just like it kind of worked, and we kind of wrote our characters were younger than we are, but it was still fun dynamics going on, and we felt like family members by the end of it. We still do. So
yeah, absolutely.
I love those personal touches in writing because it just makes it more personal for you, but also when you share those things, the reader gets to see so much of like the author in there. And I was going to say, Morgan, you mentioned Lord of the Rings, and in our previous podcast, Carissa, we're having a upcoming episode that's about reading out of your genre, and so I think Kelly and I are going to have to read Lord of the Rings, the first one. Now, we've all seen the movies, or at least I have. I think Kelly has. So I didn't know if you were a big fan or where that came from.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm definitely the fantasy Renaissance festival nerd. So, but that kind of thing goes with my like love of acting and dressing up and storytelling. Because in my children's programs, I was Robin Hood's daughter for one of my shows, and I was dressed like a Renaissance fair, like a huntsman or something. It was just fun. But yeah, so I love that, and I'm trying to convince Pepper Basham to write a fantasy with me. So just let her know if you see her.
Pressure.
But she said when she has time, which is probably 20 projects from now, we can get to that. But I told her it took Tolkien 14 years to create the Lord of the Rings, all the multiverse and all the worlds and ages and stuff. And I was like, we have time.
Word,
we can just
yeah.
let it simmer, Pepper. So
You can just have a very, very, very long Facebook message with 20 years worth of notes to comb through.
yeah.
Have you read it, Betsy?
I have not. I have.
Okay.
I have seen the movies. We actually went and saw the movies in theater and had to wait.
Same. Yeah.
Right here. And my poor husband, he says when he went and did the same thing. Obviously, we didn't know each other then. He said he had no idea that it was going to stop after a movie, like where movie one stopped. He had no idea. He's like, man, we've been sitting here 3 hours. There's a lot of story left, and then it like cuts off. He's like, what?
I used to hate having to wait every year at Christmas.
A
it
whole
came
year.
out. Like,
Yes.
I was like, oh, I just want to get to the next one. You've already filmed them, just put them out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and we're watching Rings of Power right now, my husband and I. So, so yeah, we're enjoying being in that world. But I just, once again, back to story, complex characters, motivations. All the stuff we geek out on as writers. You can't watch something most of the time without picking apart. Like, what's the motivation here? Oh, that's a good one. Or the character arc. Oh, this is the black moment. But that's we're training ourselves, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Christy, do you have a quote for us to end today?
I do. I made it a Christmassy one, too. So, our hearts grow tender with childhood memories and love of kindred, and we are better throughout the year for having, in spirit, become a child again at Christmas time. And that's by Laura Ingalls Wilder from Prairie Wisdom.